Schwartz, and I performed on the big stage yesterday with doing a sonic alchemy journey. I performed these things called sonic alchemy journeys, and I've been working with chronic degenerative conditions and allergies and autoimmune conditions using vibrational healing techniques and technologies since 2000. And I've been on this crazy journey of first working with patients and what's the best ideal way of accessing cellular memory. You guys know when I talk about cellular memory, is that a concept? Yes, no, a little bit? See, that's really interesting. I find that really interesting. There's a lot of things along this journey that come into my mind, and then I kind of start talking about them, and people are like a little bit, or I don't know what that means. And I was like, wow, that's like, to me, that's fascinating, because that's like a major thing. Over the next hour, we're going to be talking. I want to play some frequencies and a couple different things here more as samples and demonstrations. But I also really want to take this time to give a little bit more of the background on some fundamentals of new Earth technologies. Because I really feel like, what is the old Earth? The old Earth is processed foods and traditional farming and pharmaceuticals and the current money system and everything that we're living in, right? This is our 3D world. However, what's the new world? The new world is looking, hey there. The new world is alternative ways of driving, alternative ways of eating, alternative ways of thinking, the alternative ways of healing. I own a company called Bioharmonic Technologies, and if you haven't been to the Vibradome, it's the shift pod that's right over here, and it's hosting some of my technology. They're called Vibe Systems, Vibrational Individualized Body Enhancement Systems, and they work with clearing cellular memory. And people ask me, like, well, what do you do for a living? And I say that I sell interdimensional portals for your living room. And people smile just like that. And I'm like, oh, that's cute. And then I look at them like that in their eyes, and I'm like, I'm serious. Like, what's an interdimensional portal? Like, we think of like Star Trek and Star Wars, these light gates, right? Going through from one side to another and showing up in a different land. I think this is a really good place to start this conversation. Because when we think about physics, let's talk about basic physics. Basic physics, there's like two kinds of physics. There's what we call Newtonian physics, which is like the gravity and acceleration and mass, and it basically explains the 3D world for which we exist in. Then there's quantum physics, which goes down into subatomic particles. And when we look at this, it's completely different principles of physics. And what quantum physics says is that we live in a sea of infinite possibilities. So I think there's another really interesting thing to think about as well too. And is this bullshit or is it real? Like, think like, okay, even like the spiritual community, you're setting intentions and you're burning your sage and relating, you're eating oils and you're doing all these things, and we're talking about abundance and all these airy-fairy things. Do we really believe it? And if it's real, then what are the physics governing that to make it a quote-unquote a recipe, a science, to actually manifest it or to create it, to bring it into existence? I think about even something like the cell phones. I'm not sure I think there's a broad spectrum of people here, but in the in the early 80s, you know, they had these big brick cell phones, and they're like, this is going to be the future. And people are like, are you kidding me? Like, you have to plug it into your car stereo, and like, I mean, it's your car lighter, and like, but now there's a statistic that shows that there's more cell phones on this planet than people. Most people have more than one cell phone. And and the entire planet is connected through this technology, which is really just fascinating to think. And in a short amount of time, like less than 30 years, the entire landscape of this planet has changed. That's fast and incredible. I developed a technology, a biofeedback technology. Before I tell about that, I think to set up what I'm about to tell you was, I told you I was in clinical practice from 2000 till I moved till present. Basically in clinical practice from 2000 to 2016, and in 2000, please come and join us.
Well, I was wondering if you could turn up louder so I could work on the painting
Do you,
and still hear you.
do you want to do the, can you adjust the volume? Feel free.
Do it?
That's an invitation.
No, and then we could turn this out there.
People always tell me, you should play your frequencies louder, you should do all these things. And I kind of just, I don't want to be too intrusive, you know, I kind of want to just work in the space. So thank you for the invitation.
Yeah.
Because my East Coast area's energy would be like, oh, let's just put speakers up around this whole place and blast Dr. Schwartz's like talk throughout the.
Yeah, please do, because I'm going to be right over there, and I gotta paint, but I want to hear you.
Perfect.
So, okay.
Thank you.
Can we do
So in 2007, I had in 2007, I was opening up a large center in Denver, Colorado. And I was at the time working with these little energy vials. And literally, like, people were like, well, what are they? They were quote unquote homeopathic vials. But what they were glass tubes with water in them. That was my modality, a glass tube with water. And then what's in water, there was different frequencies. Louder? Go ahead, you're in charge.
Okay.
Do the mix. And what we started doing was, one of my early teachers, she taught me how to imprint a signature into water. Is this working for you guys? Okay.
Dude, you change the balance so that channel's loud and this one's soft because it's really loud.
All right, you guys are in charge. I'm just gonna keep talking. And in 2000, and so we ended up having this. I started using these little water vials and putting them into people's energy fields and muscle testing with them. And I was treating chronic illness, like autoimmune diseases, emotional imbalances, physical healing things, and it was working. And it would kind of freak me out. I'd be driving home like, how is that possible that I could take a glass tube of water and put it in somebody's biofield, do some muscle testing and some acupuncture points, and literally change physiology repeatedly over and over and over and over and over again. And so I started thinking about, like, why is that? And I got very heavy into studying quantum physics and energy, all forms of energy. I said to myself, if energy is real, I can't discount one part of energy and accept another part. I have to look at all of it. And I'm a traditional, I think I'm a scientist. And it's taken me into the metaphysical world through my study of traditional science. Because I see a lot more similarities than differences. And I see what I call the laws of nature. And when we follow the laws of nature, there's a very predictable outcome that happens. And it's one of two things. It's either regenerative or degenerative. And that's the laws of nature. And it applies to everything. And I'm a doctor, so I apply it to the human body, but you can apply that process to anything. So in 2007, I was opening up this large center, and I was looking for a different delivery system, because at this time, after the last 7 years, I had like maybe 1,000 of these vials in all these boxes, and they were like computer programmed. They were literally like organic biofeedback. It's like an organic computer program that I was reprogramming people's neurology with these vials. And I said, well, if I can imprint into water, because what do I know about water? Water has memory, and water is a conductor. And what is our bodies? Well, our bodies are basically a vial. Our bodies are conductive structures surrounding water. So it's like I'm taking a vial and putting it into my vial. My patient is a unique vial, and I'm taking a cat or dog or fungus or sadness or whatever, and I'm putting it in there and reprogramming the field. And it worked all the time. So I was like, okay, that works. So what else can I do instead of using water? And I said, what if I used music? What if I used sound? And a friend of mine had a recording studio, and I've done some healing work with him. And I said, hey, do you want to do an experiment? And he said, sure. And I said, do you have any health issues? And he said, I have a cat allergy, a very severe cat allergy. And I just started dating this girl that has 3 cats. And I really like her, but it's a total mess. You know, snotty, red, no bueno. And I was like, perfect, because I had at the time I ran a clinic called the Allergy Stop, and it was a holistic allergy center. And I had a very specific cat allergy protocol that I used that worked almost all the time. So I had a very clear baseline. And so, never being in a recording studio before a day in my life, I went in with my friend Chris, and we worked with Ableton software, which is something I never used before ever in my life either. And we started navigating through this, and I recreated my cat allergy protocol in Ableton. And I treated him for a very severe cat allergy. I did 18 of 22 samples he was allergic to. And over the next week, I treated him 4 times and eliminated his cat allergy in his recording studio. And he's married to this girl to this day. This was in 2007, and they live with the cats, and they have a baby, and have happily ever after. That was the beginning of my music company, Bioharmonic Technologies. We came out, I made my first album. I said, we can imprint into music, so let's start doing that. And that was I recorded my first 2 albums with Chris. These vibes, vibrational individualized body enhancement systems, are delivery systems. And where this started coming into me was about the concept of cellular memory. And this was in 2007, so if I ever take it back even a little bit before this, my first imprint with cellular memory, let me define cellular memory. Maybe that's a good place to start. Cellular memory is, okay, we all know what a cell is, correct? Like, you've heard of muscle memory? Is that a term we've heard of? If you're gonna go train for, if you're gonna train for like some kind for a marathon or for some kind of competition, or if you're gonna be learning a song or whatever, it's muscle memory, or you're rehearsing it, your memory. It's memory that you're thinking about in your mind. Your cells have memory. And that's what allows them to kind of perpetuate themselves. And so you can use it for good, but most people are associated with cellular memory with bad. Like if you have some kind of trauma, or you have like a really painful breakup, and then next thing you know, you're running off of cellular memory with the next person that you find that you're quote unquote attracted to. And then you're in the same cycle over and over and over and over again. And you don't understand why that is, because you're running off a program, a computer program that's locked into your cellular memory. So that's a high-level understanding of cellular memory. My first experience with this was I got invited to Peru in 2004 with a shaman, and I had this whole experience with plant medicines and going to Machu Picchu and getting my universe completely blasted open. That was one of my magical experiences, trips that I had. And I remember was living in Denver. I was in my maybe late 20s and early 30s, whatever. But I remember leaving the day after St. Patrick's Day. It was a big party, and we were at the bars and all that. And I got an airplane and I flew to Peru, and had experiences that I had never experienced ever before. I never even had any idea that something like that even existed. found myself in the deep jungles of southern Peru, and then up into the Sacred Valley and up to Machu Picchu, and we experienced ayahuasca and San Pedro and just everything. And I remember writing out my intentions, and I wrote out this big long list of all these intentions I would work on that trip, and I can tell you that nowhere on that list was anything about me drinking. Like, oh, I want to stop drinking. And I never really considered myself having a drinking problem. And to this day, I still don't think that I'm a person that has a drinking problem. But at the time, I drank a lot. I'd go to the bars with my friends all the time as part of my, we'd go out for drinks a lot, so whatever you want to call that. And then I remember coming back on opening day for the Rockies. I lived in Denver, which is another huge party. And my friends were like, how was your trip? Let me buy you a drink. And I remember staring there and looking at my favorite drink, which was a Greyhound, a vodka grapefruit. It was like my favorite drink at the time. And just looking at that drink and having zero feeling for any inclination to put that in my mouth and drink it. Like, it was gone. And I remember having like a little sip because my friend bought me a drink, and I just put it down and pushed it away. And it didn't repulse me, I just didn't want it. And that was the first time I had that feeling, like cellular memory. Because the download I got when I drank ayahuasca for the first time was that it was like a soul scraper, like I had my soul scraped. And that's not the intention of this talk, but it was an entry point into having an experience about cellular memory and about how we can reprogram the vibrational resonant process of our bodies that anchors us into experiences. So that kind of began the journey. And using these little vials, I'd be able to put them into your field and start reprogramming and clearing cellular memory. And what I saw, there was three pillars in my practice: clearing cellular memory, balancing the body, and reducing inflammation. And clearing inflammation was basically number one. Cellular memory was number two, and then balancing the body basically was kind of the third component that usually happened passively after I cleared the other two. And what I found to be fascinating was that there's primary triggers of inflammation, like infectious agents and toxins and emotions, and toxins come from a lot of different places. They can come from emotions, traumas. Like, think about out of the womb, if you just had like a parent that didn't want you, and you're floating around in amniotic fluid, and that's being anchored in the water, being imprinted into your water, into your vibrational network. And you come out of the womb, you have a cellular memory around that's toxic. What kind of surroundings was going on with your mother? Was she taking pharmaceuticals? Was she taking drugs? Was she drinking? Was she happy? Was she sad? Was she in love? Was it? And I'm not even talking about past life. I'm not even going to get into any of that. That's for another conversation. This is only 3D womb stuff. And then say everything's fine, but what happens if you lose a parent that you're really close to, and now you're experiencing abandonment? What if I think about this, I think about like the Me Too movement with women, and about the damage that, about the trauma that men have on women. And I've actually spent a lot of time really thinking about this as men, as a man, because I can't speak as a woman, but I can speak as a man, at least in this lifetime, is that most men act out from traumas they've had, from experiences they've had with women. And it could be from your mother, or your grandmother, or from a girlfriend. They say like women mature faster than men. So like women are like in middle school, and guys, little dorky, little guys are like, oh, I like her, and then you get your heart broken. That perpetuates everything, just to let you know. That kind of starts everything at that moment. So I don't want to get off topic, but I feel that these are aspects that are innocent, that imprint into our cells. And I think what's important for me to share with you at this time is, you see how easy it is to imprint into cellular memory? Something really ridiculous like a girl that you like breaks your heart, and now you start this whole cycle for the rest of your life. The cool part about that is, if you can easily create something negative in your life like that, what if you imprinted something positive in your life? It's the same thing, it's the same pathway. And, we think about the reptilian brain. I've been seeing lizards all over this place, and it's been really taking me into the portal to the new earth, and it's like being here in the desert, and the reptilian brain, and the whole programming of, of survival. So I do think that there's like an innate programming of our origin as of a species, of this like survival. And why we're not programmed for thrival, we're programmed for survival, which I ponder. And I don't have an answer to, but this is stuff that I think about sometimes. Because I was like, why do we always have to go, like, you know what I hate? I hate when we say, oh, when things get tough is when you see your biggest growth. And they talk about, a wind blowing against a tree is what makes the tree really strong. It's that stress. And I get that, because that's a law of nature. I said everything matches up to a law of nature, and that's a law of nature, and I support that. But is that true? Like, we have to like suffer, go through pain to grow? Like, that's sad.
Show of hands.
What's that?
How many people agree? I hear that all the time. We have to suffer. No, I do not agree.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that seems like it's so. I'm just kind of putting that out there, and I don't really want to get sidetracked, but just something to think about, because I really want to talk about the concept of signatures and cellular memory, because this takes us back to the vials, and what I'm going to be really wanting to talk about with this talk is, you have these inflammatory triggers that can come from a lot of different places, and I would go through with my muscle testing in these vials, or then my biofeedback system, whatever the modality was, and I'd be able to check, and all of the inflammatory triggers were gone in my patients, but yet they'd still be experiencing symptoms. And I'm like, well, how are they still having symptoms if the triggers are gone? And what I would find was it'd be cellular memory, and I'd go in and clean that out. Then the symptoms would be gone, and they would stay gone because there's nothing to feed into it.
How do you clean that out?
Great question. That's the $1 million question. And this is what I pondered in my practice, is how do you access that? And I think about, I think the number one causative factor for most disease I remember one of my teachers, I'm NLP certified, and one of my teachers, she said that she's convinced that 100% of all conditions stems from an emotional root. I don't know if I could say 100%, but it's definitely an exceptionally large amount. And I think the issue with practitioners, generally speaking, is we all know that, but we don't have a good way to access it, to clear it. Like, we know it intellectually, and there's a lot of techniques out there for clearing, and I'm going to get into the mechanics of it in just a second. But I do feel that we're busy. You go to see your doctor that's booked out for a month or whatever it is. You got a time slot, you got to get in there. How much time you got? You either have your practitioners that give you an hour and a half, and you're in there doing seriously deep work, which I think is too much work to process at one time, or you get the other end extreme, you get 10, 15 minutes, moving things along, and people are busy. And so what can you do that's effective to access it the most effective way? And I'm a chiropractor, so as the definition of a chiropractor, we're always trying to move things along quickly. But I also really like delivering high quality. I don't want treat patients. I want treat patients forever, because I'm helping you achieve a higher level of health. I don't want to treat you for the same thing forever. That doesn't work for me personally, and that doesn't work for you. So we're not going to do that in my practice. But to answer your question, let's talk about that. cellular memory. What are the components of cellular memory and how do we access it? And what I'm going to go over now is what I just presented last week in San Diego at something called the Brain Summit. I was down there, I presented amongst all these amazing neurologists and doctors on the topic of brain health and brain conditions and neurodegenerative conditions. And the information I'm going to share with you is what I discussed with them. There's two major components of the cell, only two. One is the living connective tissue matrix, which is the exoskeleton of the cell, and it surrounds every tissue system and cell of the body. It's what I call, in my book, I refer to it as the new nervous system, but it's actually, I think the better term is it's the true nervous system. So traditionally speaking, we think about the brain and the spinal cord, okay, and the cranium. Those are that's the central nervous system, okay? You guys with me on the brain and spinal cord? We're all familiar with that. Then we have your cranial nerves and your peripheral nerves that come off of your brain and spinal cord and go to every tissue system and cell of your body. You guys with me on this?
Yes.
Okay. However, that's called your peripheral nervous system. But there's another nervous system. There's a couple different other nervous systems. Just for the sense of completion, there's something called the enteric nervous system, which is in your gut, which has more neurological connections than your brain. Your brain, that's got your gut-brain connection, that's what they talk about, which is grossly overlooked. But the one I'm going to talk about is what we call the living connective tissue matrix, and the word that most people are familiar with is the fascia. And it's a network that surrounds your tissues. And when we look at what that's made of, there's three materials that make it up. It's called the microfilaments, microtubules, and intermediate tubules. And this is in every medical textbook of every level. It might even be like, I don't say second grade science, but if any traditional like high school textbook that you open up, within the first chapter they talk about signal transduction and things like this. This is not the world according to Dr. Schwartz. This is in every book. And I don't think that people put it all together. But when I started reading these textbooks, and I said to myself, this is like energy medicine. But we don't think about it in terms of energy medicine. We think about it in terms of putting something in our mouths, like pharmaceuticals or herbs or drugs, which works. It's a delivery system, but it's not the most efficient and it's not the most direct access point. So microfilaments, microtubules, intermediate tubules, those are they govern two of your fundamental physiological processes. How our cells replicate, that's important, right? Because we're 100 trillion cells, and they say, every 6 years we're a completely different person, which is also fascinating to think about. Who do you want to be 6 years from now? Because you're going to be a complete new person. Through a process called mitosis, how our cells replicate. And there's another process called signal transduction, how our cells communicate. And is this boring? No. Are you guys with me? Okay, cool. Because we're getting into sometimes. I was at the Brain Summit and they were like, it was like this heavy, hardcore like neuro lesson, and I was like, oh my god, I'm back in school. And I was there with my girlfriend, who doesn't have any, and I was like, is this interesting to you? And she's like, oh yeah, this is interesting. So just checking in. I think it's fascinating, but that's why we're here. Okay. So this is I think this is really interesting. These two governing processes, which are not discussed next to each other in medical textbooks, mitosis and signal transduction, what are the two initiating fundamental processes that trigger both of them? Microfilaments, microtubules, and intermediate tubules. And you know what the function of those materials, what they do? They have a function. They have one function. They interpret your environment through vibrational resonance. That's what they do. That's their job. So when I learned that, I was like, cool, well, then how do I influence that? Because you know what happens right after that? chemistry. And what's chemistry? Chemistry can be happy chemistry, or it could be regenerative chemistry, or it could be degenerative chemistry. That's really what we got. So, once again, it comes down to we live in this survival world with all this trauma, and we kind of set ourselves up for degenerative chemistry. But the arrows move. Okay, so how many people have taken, like, are in the science world at all? Has anybody taken chemistry? So like when you're doing a couple, so like if you're looking in chemistry and they have all these little equations, they have these little arrows going in these equations. So I always say chemistry, everything works, chemistry moves, the arrows move in both directions. Meaning it's not a one-way street, it's a two-way street. So if something going in that's negative can create a chemical effect, something going in positive can create a chemical effect. You just got to change the stimulus, change the signal. And in this 3D allopathic world that we live in, we use the word signal transduction, but if you study what's a signal? What's a signal? Like a Wi-Fi signal? That's energetic, right? It's like an impulse, a trigger, insert word, that creates a signal moving across a conductive medium to create chemistry. That's what signal transduction is, and that's how our cells communicate. Through microfilaments, microtubules, and intermediate tubules. So how do we clear cellular memory? We lay you in the field of harmonic resonance, sound, light, frequency, and vibration that will create new chemistry. It's really just that easy. So if you're having a health challenge, it starts with you just taking stock on what signals are influencing your fields. And then how do we change them? And I think the challenge is two things. Don't take this the wrong way, but I used to say in my practice, your conscious mind only has two responsibilities in my practice. A, to show up on time, and B, to pay me. Other than that, I have no interest in working with your conscious mind, because it's completely kind of irrelevant for this reprogramming of what's happening in our bodies. Even like here at this festivals, I'm super empathic, super energetic. There's all this stuff happening. There's medicines going around and all kinds of things. And my girlfriend's the same way. And we get ourselves wrapped up in situations that our conscious mind can't even keep up with. And then we find ourselves in a situation that like makes no sense. And it creates like drama because we're trying to interpret something that we don't even know what even just happened. We're just making it up. We're trying to draw some kind of connection of something that happened subconsciously that happened 20 minutes ago, and we're just processing it. So it's completely irrelevant. And I think that's what's so cool about music festivals, transformational music festivals, is because we're listening to music and lights, and it's a high energy response, and people like it, and we're moving and we're dancing. And all of these things create access points. And this is why there's so much creativity and that come out of these festivals, and quote unquote downloads, because we're creating new chemistry. So that's how you clear cellular memory. And my practice, based off that principle, I worked with sound, light, frequency, and vibration. And people say, wow, you work with a lot of different things. I developed a biofeedback system in 2010 called the ASA Balance, and that was a secondary effect to these vials, and I made a prototype off of making music. We talked about the cat allergy experiment. And I have 7 albums now, and I feel like I need to make 700. Like, I just don't. And now I'm making hardware. Like, I'm just super ADD. Like, I'm needing to focus. But it's all the same. Like, it's like, oh, you do a lot of different things. No, I'm actually doing the same thing. I just keep evolving it. Like, because it's all about how do we most efficiently influence chemistry for helping people release past traumas and to harmonize themselves. And that leads to harmonizing humanity, which is my hashtag for my company, Bioharmonic Technologies. So let's see. I want to talk about signatures, because this is going to bring it home a little more interactive. Any questions so far?
When did you start getting passionate about what you're creating, and know that you were connecting with your pure intelligence in a grounded way, that you were creating new technology, and something you were giving forth?
That's a good question. I feel that's a great question, man.
You're very good at helping.
Because, I mean, talk about imprinting. Coming out of my mom's womb, I grew up, I love my mother very much. And I miss my mother. We were talking about going home and visiting her. But my mom has health issues, and she has a lot of, I don't want to say mental health issues, but she had trauma. And interesting about my mother, because this kind of ties this all into an interesting cycle, is my mother was like recruited, and she was like a soprano singer, and got accepted to go to Juilliard as a kid, and was like recruited by like Hollywood to go like, and my grandfather was like, you're gonna go to college, you know, and whatever, and like she never went, and she met my dad, and she has kids, and she never really did her passion. And I see this because my mom's probably my biggest teacher, because I've worked with her for my entire life. And she is the physical manifestation of somebody that has never lived her highest potential. And that's sad. So I kind of grew up with understanding that I had a learning disability. And I just think, what if I grew up in a household where my mom was like, you're a genius, you're brilliant, you're amazing, you're gonna change the world. What would my life have been like? Because my life now is awesome, but I had to go through a lot of reprogramming about that I'm stupid, and that I have a learning disability, and I have all these problems, and that I'm not smart.
You're not the only one. I would thought you.
Yeah, I think it's a common story. So to answer your question about all these things,
So when did that click for you? When you
like last week.
was there a synergy between you wanting to help your mother and clicking in with what you knew was your higher intelligence?
My question is, how much time do I have? What's the schedule?
I think you have about half an hour, 15 minutes.
Do it.
You've been on for
Oh, okay.
for 38 minutes.
All right, so I just want to make sure we're checking for time. Wait, ask me a question?
Okay, so when the synergy of your sensitivity and empathy with your mother's suppressed intelligence clicked into your desire to connect with yours, about how old?
Okay, this is a great question. I can tell you exactly when that happened. I can tell you exactly when it happened. It was 2000. And I just moved to Denver in 1999. I graduated chiropractic school in 1998. And I somehow intuitively found myself in Denver, Colorado. And I thought I was moving to San Diego, but somehow I ended up in Denver, Colorado, and I'm here. I don't know why I'm here, but I'm here. And I got a job, and I was working with this woman that was working with these vials, which I didn't know anything about. I mean, I went undergrad for sports medicine. I moved to Colorado to work with snowboarders and like extreme sport athletes, and I was big sports guy. That was my thing. I was huge into sports, and I wanted to be like work with Olympic athletes and all that. And I got this job with this woman that was treating chronic illness, and the waiting room was packed, and all these people were getting better, and she was doing these little, and it was, I didn't know anything about it. And I said, wow, maybe this can help my mom, because I was watching my mom degenerate over the years, and she, and I said, maybe this would help, and she came out to visit me, and I got her doctor, a visit with this doctor, and for the first time since she was diagnosed, she started getting better. And this doctor said, you should go learn this. I said, okay. And I did. I began to San Diego for the first time. But what was interesting, and I sat in this seminar, and it was called Jaffe-Mahler technique. I don't think it even exists anymore. I just remember sitting in that seminar in San Diego, never muscle testing a day in my life. I remember I met this girl there, and she would like tease me because she's like, oh, you like lined up on the wrong side of the table and you were pushing in the wrong direction. Like I didn't know anything. I mean, I was, like, oh, Dr. Schwartz, you're a wizard. You had to see me like in 2000. I didn't know anything about any of this. And, but I do remember sitting there and hearing this process. They talked about pathogens, bacteria, viruses, parasites, mold, fungus, yeast, mycoplasmal infections, and chronic illness, and they were treating them using muscle testing in vials. And just something in my brain said, truth. I just got a huge truth all weekend. And I remember leaving that weekend saying to myself, my life is never gonna be the same. And I went back into my practice Monday and I said, I just learned this thing over the weekend. Can I try it with you? And my patients were like, sure. And they started getting better quickly, immediately. And that kind of began the whole thing. And I went there's a couple other stories I just don't have time to get into that was kind of the preface to my big spiritual awakening. But what was happening was when I kind of went all in, I made a commitment to myself that I was going to, because I'm a scientist, like I'm really, like I need to know, I need to understand. That's just who I am. And I said, if I'm gonna go into energy, I'm gonna study every aspect of energy. And I got into channeling and numerology and astrology and like just all like everything that came in. And it was fascinating. And I saw all the interconnected points. And at that time I was reading, I was into the Cryon. Who's ever familiar with Cryon? So I heard Cryon, he's like a channeled being. That was my first channeled being. And I was reading through his book in 2000, and he was talking about all the indigo children that were coming in. And my sister, who was having her first child, who's now about to graduate high school and go to college, which is crazy because this was in 2000. And I remember he's reading about this, and I bought a book on indigo children. And I started reading the book just because I was interested. And as I was reading through this book on indigo children, I was like, this sounds like me. And I was like, it can't be me. Like, I'm too old to be an indigo child. All these children are, and I started reading, like, ferociously reading through the book. And it's energy. Meaning in 2000, 99% of all the kids coming through are indigo children, but it's like a grain of sand, and then 2 grains of sand, and then 4 grains of sand, and it exponentially grows. It's like the X-Men. You know, you have like the little kids coming in, and you have the teachers, right? The early teachers. And they said like early indigos were coming in as early as the late 60s. And so I sent the book to my mom. And I said, read this book and let me know what you think. And she's highlighting, and she's like this and that and everything. And I had a major download that I'm an indigo child, and that there's actually nothing wrong with me, but I was kind of just put into a system as an early indigo in the 60s, in the 70s and 80s, you know, in New Jersey, you know, and they don't know what to do with a kid that's ADD and not really interested in what's happening in the 3D world, and I didn't know anything about it, and so that changed things. So that was the moment. And I've always said that all of my I treat a lot of kids. I've treated a lot of kids over the years. And it's really interesting because after I read that book and I got dialed in on children, the moms would come in freaked out because kids would be like ADD and have all these learning disabilities, and all the time they're like, we don't know what's wrong with little Jimmy. And I would say I was like, do you want your mom in the room? And he's like, no. And they would go outside, and I just started having this conversation like he was like an adult, like it was like right there, and super connected, and they knew what was up, and I just reprogrammed it and moved on. Yeah, and so that's what, so we say this is the medicine for the new millennium. Sound, light, frequency, and vibration, and we're all doing it here at these festivals. So I want to spend time with signatures, and getting this back to what I thought I was going to be talking about this whole talk, but we're here now, right? There's another component. Everybody asks me, how do I make my music? What frequencies? Are you recording in 432? Are you doing like, all the stuff? And it's yes, and I say I use a lot of different frequencies. I use a lot of different things. But it's not about, I'm a doctor studying music more than I am a musician, and I love coming to these festivals and interacting with musicians that blow my mind on their level of knowledge of how to compose music. I've been very blessed to work with 4 amazing producers over my 7 albums over the last, 11 years. But really, my whole journey comes down to signatures. What's a signature, you might be asking? When you go back to the vial, and we're a vial, and you put a vial into your vial, that's a signature. Signature of cat, signature of dog, signature of emotion, signature of pathogen, whatever it is, it's a signature. So when I started making my music, I was like, how can I just put these signatures into music? So then I started asking, what's a signature? Well, let's get frequencies, okay? Well, because everything has its own unique frequency. Like I am the Dr. Vibe frequency. If you saw me 2 years ago, or 2 years ago at the portal here, I think I was more the Steve frequency. I was a different person 2 years ago, for sure. And I was a different frequency when I was in Colorado. So what frequency are you? And what frequency are you when you're on mushrooms or when you're not on mushrooms? What frequency are you when you're living in the city versus when you're in the desert? You're a different vial. And so what signature can we put into your vial to influence your vial? And that's the premise of me making my music. And so this takes me to, who was at my workshop? Who was at my sound healing yesterday? A couple of you. And I started playing, what I was working through was my library of signatures of creating a field that can influence your physiology. And my most recent exploration into signatures is with this live plant machine. And yesterday I featured 2 of my favorites, the white sage and the jacaranda tree, which is my favorite tree. That's blooming right now. And what's up with that? Well, I'll give you a little backstory on that. I was living in Denver, Colorado, and a friend of mine said, you need to meet my friend Teresa Helgeson. And she has this machine that plugs into plants and they sing, and I'm like, bring her to me now. And my neighbor who did my garden and did all stuff, a major green thumb, I said, oh, this woman has this machine that plugs into plants, and she bought one of my first generation sound lounges. She was a massage therapist. She was my neighbor and living in Denver, Colorado. And she's like, get her over here. So we went over, and I remember my friend had a marijuana plant in her yard, and we hooked up this plant machine, and the fucking plant machine was singing. And I said to her, I was like, why can't I take my therapeutics and layer them behind there? And we talked about it for years, and then I moved to California, and then I was like, I'm doing that. And I bought a machine about maybe 3 years ago, and I've been collecting medicinal signatures of medicinal plants and herbs since. I have about 60 recordings. And we're making what my girlfriend refers to as the sonic garden. And we want to make a whole library for the vibe. So you're laying in the field of harmonic resonance. Because if that's what influences chemistry, you can smell it and that creates chemistry. You can eat it, that influences chemistry. Why can't you lay in it? Which you can. what if you combine them? You can do that too. So one of my little pet side projects is, one of the things that bring me a lot of joy is I love collecting these plant signatures. It's really fun. And it's changed my life, and it'll change your life. And who's vegan here? So I'd like to make my, I have a lot of vegan friends. I'm not vegan. I like eating vegan food, I'm just not vegan. But most vegans that I talk to, you know, they're vegan for the humanitarian purposes, which I totally respect and support. But when I plug in a plant and the thing is singing, it's might as well be a cow. So then you start asking, well, so how's the plant being farmed? And it's the same thing. So veganism is like a start. And my friend Reed, if he was doing the laser, I'm not sure, he's a hardcore vegan guy. And I love having conversations with him. And he's like, but it's a start. I get that it's a start, but now we're walking down this road. And it comes back to harmonizing humanity in all aspects of it. What's the humanitarian way of harvesting plants? Same way as how do we harvest meat? And I wrote a book, it's called Primal Resonance, Discover the Secrets to Health, Vitality, and Optimal Human Performance. People refer to it as the doctrine to the new earth, and it talks about the top 10 lists on how to reverse aging and degeneration using sound, light, and frequency technologies, and the new epidemic in America, chronic systemic inflammation. That's the book. And I don't have any with me.
I have.
Oh, you have one.
Would you like me to bring it so people can see?
Yeah, people, maybe, if you want to check it out. But it's on, if you're interested, contact me, we can send you copies, or it's on Amazon. But where I talk about toxins in the book. And through my research, I mean, listen, I'm on board with all the conspiracy theories. Just, you know, I can support all those. But really, when I did my research about what I see, what I kind of got from my research is we have 8 billion people on this planet that need to eat. And I don't know what statistics are, but there's a population of them that are not eating. So we're having a problem getting 8 billion people fed. And how do you do that? You need to mass produce food. And there's a business, and you have to, and there's pesticides, and it's not good, and it's dangerous for our bodies. But I feel that the next phase to this is, which we see it happening, new ways of farming. Like, it's happening right now. This is new earth techniques. So what's gonna happen remember we talked about the cell phone, how there's more cell phones than people on the planet? That's in 30 years. So what's this planet gonna look like? What's our farming situation gonna look like in 30 years? What's our travel? I mean, like, gas is $4.29. You kidding me? Dude, you don't think Tesla stock is going through the roof right now? You know? So the same thing with pharmaceuticals. What if we have a lot of people buying these Vibe systems? And my girlfriend, she says, I've never sold a Vibe before. And I'm like, they're really easy to sell because people buy them, want them. You're not selling them. You're just making people, knowing that they exist, and people that are connecting with them buy them. Because it's a download for the new technology, for the new delivery system. So I'm committed to advancing this, this science. And I think it's important to note that we're also working with HRV, heart rate variability systems, and we've been doing before and after testing with the Vibes. Listen to 20 minutes of Vibes, and we've seen profound changes. I'd love to share a case study, that just one case study for time purposes, but it was with with my girlfriend, and we were getting ready to go to the nurses' cannabis conference down in San Diego. And there's a group of nurses that are championing the sort of legalization of cannabis in the nursing profession. New Earth community. Very interesting. It's all through like research and grants. I mean, this is legit stuff that's happening. And so we did a study where we woke up, did a baseline HRV, and hers always looks good, and then she consumed cannabis through the inhalation method delivery system. And we did a scan 20 minutes later, and what do you mean? Am I done?
What happened to the clock? Damn it.
We don't, what clock? Oh, right in front of me? Oh. Oh.
Wind up
Okay.
naturally and then switch over.
Okay.
Not like being like, I'm not thinking, it's just
Round of applause for Harlan, everybody. This is amazing. Thank you.
Hi, Harlan.
You're doing great.
Harlan.
and I'm the stage manager for
Thank you.
Peanut Butter Pretzel. Okay.
Thank you, Harlan.
Enjoy the end of his talk and
Thank you. I have no idea what I was talking about. Anyway, okay, the cannabis study. The cannabis study. So we smoked in all the parameters, and I need to put a little asterisk on what I'm about to tell you, because I believe in the medicinal properties of cannabis. But this is one case study of how it resulted. Okay, I don't have a large smattering, but I'd like to do more testing. This had a very profound impact in all of the parameters that we tested in the not positive direction. And then 20 minutes after that, we vibed her again, and everything restored back to about 20 minutes. And so the question is, this is not about cannabis.
Yeah.
This is about, like, even last night, like we're recording this. So anyhow, even last night we had some, there was a little different chemistries involved. And I felt a very specific way, and I was thinking, but we're vibing. And so it really interacts with the medicines, and it harmonizes your neurology. So to finish this up, we're gonna, what's that?
Are we gonna do the plant walk? Are we gonna go for a plant walk?
Yeah, so to finish this up, yesterday, who's had a chance to walk up to the sauna? We had a magical walk over there yesterday, and one of my favorites, the last time I was here 2 years ago, I tried to get a recording of a Joshua tree. That didn't happen. We don't always get recordings. Some plants I've been chasing down for years that are on my list. A Joshua tree is one of them, and I just think last time I was here, it was the desert, it was dried out, and water makes a difference. Oh, and just for sense of completion, I talked about there's two components of cellular memory. We only talked about one, the living connective tissue matrix. Number two is the intracellular water. That'll be for another talk. That's another hour. But what we're going to do is we took a walk up there yesterday, and the desert is blooming in the most beautiful, most magical way. And I'm gonna go on a nature walk with my plant machine, and I'm gonna get some, I picked out, there's some amazing desert plants, and I'm inviting whoever wants to come with me to take that walk and see if we can get some desert plant recordings. Probably now-ish.
So if we can get the recordings, you guys will be able to hear
Yeah.
what the plants sound like. Oh,
Yeah.
We're gonna get a recording and we're gonna plan, so, yeah, we're gonna get them live.
Awesome.
Yeah, we're gonna get them live, and we'll see what happens. And then we're gonna have the vibe zone set up. If you haven't been to the vibe zone, please come and vibe. We've been doing kind of private sessions all weekend, just been vibing. That's been the kind of the vibe of the class, of the weekend. So we're in flow. And I wanna thank all of you for listening to me and being here. I hope that you learned something beneficial for your lives. And you can connect with me on all social media channels, Bioharmonic Technologies. Dr. Steven Schwartz, DC, on Facebook and on Instagram. And we have cards and information available too, since we're off the grid. And I love all my portal people. And thank you for vibing with us.